Now, joining me this time in studio, someone who's definitely not a mameluke. She is financial expert, entrepreneur, author of the book, Sell Your Business for More Than It Is Worth. Where's that camera? I'll find it right there. Michelle Seiler-Tucker. Michelle, good to see you.
Good to see you, Rick. Thank you for having me.
What's interesting now is, and why this, I think, is relevant to our audience, is there are millions, I'm told, of baby boomers who own a business that they'd like to sell, but are stuck in that business. They don't have an exit strategy. They cannot sell their business. We're in tough economic times. I mean, the White House may not say so, but there are 93 million Americans who are not even included in the unemployment numbers, who are not working. They dropped out of the workforce. So you've got hardworking folks, started a family business, started a business, millions of them. Now they can't get out. You have a solution to that.
I do have a solution. You know, what I do is I work with my clients, Rick, to help them build a business in order to sell the business, to be attracted to hundreds of buyers willing to pay them top dollar. The biggest mistake that business owners make is they don't plan their exit strategy, and unfortunately, many of these baby boomers are being faced with having to close their business or sell for pennies on the dollar. So I know what buyers want. I have thousands and thousands of buyers willing to pay top dollar for good businesses. We don't have a shortage of buyers. We have a shortage of good businesses.
Interesting. Now, let me ask you this. What if, and it's a general, I understand I'm asking a general question here. Sure. It varies upon each particular instance. What if someone's out, you said you need to create the exit strategy up front. Okay, what if that horse has left the barn, or whatever that phrase is in the South? Someone already has a business, they didn't create the exit strategy, they're down the road, they're looking at selling. Anything they can start doing now strategically?
Absolutely, Rick. They can call me, number one, because 99.9% of all business owners do not plan their exit strategy. That's what I'm used to. So I go in, I look at the business, and I assess the top issues in that company. And a lot of times it's marketing, it's branding, the financials are not in good order. So I come in and I work with the business owner. I will partner with them to help them grow the business, right, so that it will be attracted to hundreds of buyers. And that's the big difference. So there are tweaks, there are things that we can fix in order to make that business sellable.
The key thing is, if I understand you correctly, is think from the buyer's perspective, not from your perspective.
Absolutely, and that's the thing I always tell my sellers. You have to know what the buyers want. What is the buyer looking for? What are the buyers wanting to purchase? You know, most buyers do not want to buy a job. They want to buy a business that's automated with intellectual property, employees in place, a healthy customer base, and good cash flow. That's what our buyers want. Now,
switching gears here, let's talk about the so-called gender pay gap. It's something that the media loves to talk about. It's something that those on the left love to politicize. I don't think it exists, Michelle. It exists in the federal government, where women earn 72% of male workers. But when you look at the so-called gender pay gap, it doesn't exist for identical positions. There may be a gap overall, but not apples to apples comparison. Men, as a general statement, take on positions, pursue positions which have more risk. Men, not as a general statement, do not leave the workforce for pregnancy leave and so forth. Care to respond?
Yes. You know, obviously I'm not the expert as far as men and women pay. I will tell you that I represent a lot of women-owned businesses that do extremely well and make just as much, if not more money than men do.
So it's a matter of working smart.
It's a matter of working smart, Rick, and it's a matter of choice. You know, I make as much, if not more, than my husband, and he's happy about that. So it's really a matter of choice. And there's a tremendous jobs out there that offer higher pay for women as well.
Well, I don't mean to politicize this, but you just sent every liberal out there into the fetal position. What you've said is women are not the victims. What you've said is that they control their own destiny. That's what America's all about.
Right. And, you know, the women, successful women need to not be passive. They need to be assertive. And
Men
they need
too.
to go.
Men
exactly.
too.
And they need to go out there and they need to seek those positions and or, you know, entrepreneurship in order to generate that higher income.
Well, listen, Michelle Seiler-Tucker, the book that you have out currently, Sell Your Business for More Than It Is Worth. It's important for a lot of, it's important for a few reasons here, and I just want to say this. Number one, I don't know how familiar you are with me. I'm an advocate of capitalism. I'm an advocate of the entrepreneur, of free markets, and you know, the culture we live in today, the media is in the business of peddling negativism. I get that. And that is counterproductive to the entrepreneur. And so when someone like you comes on and says, look, you're not the victim, you don't have to pay attention to headlines. There are certain rules you can follow to allow you to control your own destiny. I think it's important to get that message out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you need to control your own destiny. I did. You know, I used to work for corporate America, for Xerox. I went out and went into selling businesses and selling franchises, and since I've owned many businesses.
Final comment. You just made me think of something. You used to work for Xerox. Historically, Xerox had a great reputation for training individuals who knew how to market things, training individuals who knew how to train others.
They trained me.
And I don't know how they are today, but historically that's been a reputation. Is that something that, was Xerox a big influence in your life?
Absolutely. Xerox has had, I don't know about today, just like you, but they had one of the best training programs in the nation. Even the founder of Starbucks used to work for Xerox. So they've turned out some great quality individuals and one of the best training programs I've ever been through.
Were you in a copier division?
I was actually a high volume manager, managing 80 unruly sales reps.
All right, well listen, Michelle Seiler-Tucker, thank you for joining us and sharing your insight and expertise and success with our viewers.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you for having me.
All right, up next, it's Mama, well, we just did Mama Luca Day, it's not next. Up next, homegrown terror to big unions, driving businesses out of the Golden State. Our grassroots citizen panel jumps into the issues du jour. Stay with me. You're watching The Rick Amato Show on One American News. Time for the grassroots citizen panel. Joining me in studio is the woman who, unlike the federal government, shows people in America how to make money, how to economically prosper. Michelle Seiler-Tucker, author of the book. What's the name of the book?
Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth.
Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth. That's a direct title. I like it.
Good, thank you.
All right, thanks for staying over from the previous segment. Also in studio is legal analyst and attorney Deanne Arthur. Also has an expertise in sports issues. I think we might have a sports issue or two to talk about in the panel today.
Good to see you, Rick.
And joining us from Washington, D.C., as he often does, sometimes he's here in studio, is author as well as op-ed columnist for USA Today, national security expert Jim Robbins. Jim, good to see you.
Hey, Rick, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. All right, let's hit the first topic of the day. You know, a couple days ago, unfortunately, there was this tragic shooting in Ottawa, Canada, of course. Islamist sympathizer, an Islamist, I should say, shooting a Canadian soldier. Now we find that someone who recently converted to Islam took an axe, tried to take an axe to 4 police officers in New York City. He did manage to hit 2 police officers, shot and killed right afterwards, he being he with the axe. Here's what's amazing to me, and I want to start with Jim Robbins on this, is in 2011, President Obama gave in to a demand of 57 Muslim, Arab, and South Asian groups. Some of those groups had ties to Hamas, some with ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, and he agreed to systematically remove any mention of jihad and Islam from all counter-terror training manuals in the FBI. Let's go to Jim Robbins. I think that this is an outrage. Now that we see home terror happening on our shores, we're calling it workplace violence. We're calling it a freakish lone wolf attack. How can our FBI be expected to properly prevent this if they're not allowed to see it in their training manuals?
Well, it's a form of unilateral disarmament. I understand where the president is coming from. He's afraid that people are going to stigmatize Islam as some kind of a terrorism religion, which it isn't. But it is also a mistake to remove all reference to jihadist extremism and things like that from our training manuals, because as we've seen recently, it's a going concern. These types of attacks, the ones that we saw Monday in Canada and also Wednesday in Canada, and then the axe-wielding guy in New York, are a great example of the kind of jihad in place that Al-Qaeda and other groups have been talking about, where they can't do these long-term mass casualty plans like 9/11 anymore because we're pretty much on top of that. So they just say, you know, grab an axe, go kill somebody, run over people in your car, grab a gun, shoot up something. That's what they want these people to do. And if our law enforcement and security people aren't allowed to understand that, then they're going to be caught by surprise.
Dee and Arthur, related to this is that ISIS put out a video saying that they're targeting U.S., calling on attacks of ISIS sympathizers here in America to attack U.S. police officers. Yet our president will not allow the FBI to have anything referencing Islam, jihad in the FBI counter-terror training manual. Jim Robbins brought up a point. The president doesn't want to make broad, sweeping statements tying all of Islam to terror. No one expects that. We had someone who was a self-described moderate, devout Muslim on this show a couple weeks ago, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. And he said it was a mistake for the president to call ISIS not a member of Islam. If the president recognizes ISIS as a radical portion of Islam, those moderates in Islam will come out and condemn it if it's all condemn ISIS. What's your thought on all this whole thing?
I agree with Jim that it was probably a mistake to be able to take the name out altogether. But I do still agree that there has to be a broader training that has to go on from the FBI level all the way down to just the regular police officers. What we didn't mention is, in this case, as the police officers were trying to defend against him, they, I think, maybe got scared and randomly shot. A woman got injured, critically injured. So more training needs to go on, aside from just addressing the issue of ISIS and Muslim and where the attack is coming from, just having them trained in general.
Isn't that a different issue, though, police training under the flow of adrenaline and in a you know, like the Ferguson event? It's a separate issue, is it not?
Well, Rick, I'm a defense attorney, so it's like, in my mind, I have to keep going with, I have to see the point that sticks out in my head most, which is the training of the police officers, because with ill training of them, everything can fall apart from there. I don't think it's just the broad issue of how they name in the terrorist attacks, because this could have been anybody coming with a hatchet.
But here's where I have to do, I have no problem with broadening and improving the training of police officers. I just read an article by Joe Serpico yesterday. Remember Serpico?
Yeah.
He wrote an article yesterday saying that our police officers need better trained. And I have no problem with that. However, when it comes to jihad, when it comes to Islamic terror, it's not just the police officers are a small portion of that. They're the targets, according to ISIS, but it's all of America. And that's why the FBI should not have those words removed from their counter-terror training manuals that the president has agreed to do.
Well, I can agree in part, but I have to agree with Jim also that it's a balancing act. The president does have to take into account the idea of not making sure that they're not victimized as a whole, the non-wrongdoing Muslims in the country.
How are they? How are they by having training on anti-jihad, anti-terror? I don't get it.
Because there is, by putting that in there, they can put a stereotype in the mind of the police officers that will now take away their constitutional rights, that will cause for profiling, ways in which that as minorities, which Muslims are feeling as minorities, then they will not be able to defend against these kind of invasions of privacy when they are non-wrongdoing Muslims.
I disagree with you, and in fact, it's not just me. But look, I don't want law-abiding Muslims to be targeted. I'm not saying that. But I agree with the guest that was here 2 weeks ago, self-described devout Muslim, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser from Syria originally. His family's from Syria. When he said, look, the president must call ISIS a part of Islam, because the president said they weren't. By calling ISIS a part of radical Islam, he lets all Muslims know that we are separate from them and gives us the space, the room to speak out against them. I don't think that by targeting those radical wrongdoers is something that that law-abiding citizens should be concerned about. We'll get Michelle Seiler-Tucker's reaction to that on the other side of this break, as well as Jim Robbins' perspective, and we'll take a look at the Ray Rice story. I know you follow football. You represent some athletes. Okay, we're continuing the grassroots system panel on the flip side. But first, here's a look at the madness in New York City as an axe-wielding man, as we just talked about, attacks police officers. Stay with me. Watch the Rick Amato Show on American News.
Look how much it lost. Look at him. They got to arrest him. And he's shooting. No, he didn't shoot him in his head. The guy was hitting with the hammer in his head. And he's dead. The guy's dead, man. The guy's dead. He killed the guy. The guy just started hitting him. He just started hitting him for no reason. Just started swinging a hammer.
Welcome back, everybody. We're in the middle of our grassroots citizen panel. Before the break, we're discussing whether or not President Barack Obama did the right thing or the wrong thing. I think it was a wrong thing by removing any mention of counter-terror with jihad and Islam in the FBI training manuals. Our attorney on the panel, Deanne Arthur, says he needed to do it in order to prevent profiling. Michelle Seiler-Tucker, you're an economic expert, a business expert, but you're an American citizen. What do you think of this?
You know, I kind of agree with you, Rick. You got to call a spade, and you know, it's a really scary time that we live in. We don't know if we're going to get affected with Ebola or beheaded by ISIS. So, and I kind of agree with Deanne that we do need better training, police training. But you know, Deanne says we need balancing. Have you ever tried to stand on one foot? It's very tough to balance. And I believe you got to call a spade a spade.
Listen, I want to come back to Jim Robbins. You're a national security expert. Before we move on to another different topic, your reaction to Deanne's comment that we got to be careful because we don't want to end up stigmatizing a general population.
Well, the problem is that if you go too far in the other direction, you get a situation like we had with Nidal Hassan, the Fort Hood massacre shooter, in which people around him in the Army knew that there was a problem. He was openly talking about radical extremist ideas. He was even presenting them in PowerPoint presentations. The guy clearly had a problem. But when the people around him tried to bring this to the attention of higher authorities, they said, well, you know, you're the ones who have to back off. This is religious discrimination and so forth. They wouldn't listen to those guys. So the lesson was, even if you see a guy around you who is acting like a Muslim extremist, it's better for your career if you just don't say anything.
That's troubling. All right, switching gears right now. The NFL, it seems like they're always in the news for the wrong reasons these days. Now, Ray Rice, you know, you do a lot of sports legal work, Deanne Arthur. If Ray Rice is appealing his case, I'd like to get your perspective, your opinion on what happens if this were to go to court. What's interesting here, you know, the NFL runs a government-approved monopoly. I don't know how many people realize that. I mean, we know that Major League Baseball has government protection in terms of tax benefits and so forth, but the NFL is also a government-approved monopoly. It's not as if a football player who is fired can go across the street and pick up a job in the same industry. What if Ray Rice were to take this whole thing to court? He's appealing the case. He says the NFL is guilty of double jeopardy. Your thoughts?
Well, he does have a hearing November 5th and 6th where he is going to air his grievances about what the NFL knew or didn't know at the time of his first suspension. If the appeal is denied and it does go to court, it would have to go to court by Ray Rice saying basically that he was terminated without good cause because, as you were saying, the NFL is still a business. They would have to look at their policy that they already had in place. Their policy was, You do wrong, you commit a crime, you get suspended for this amount of time. Now, where the NFL has gotten into shaky ground is by then punishing him again. Because if they knew, if Roger Goodell has to get there and testify that he knew, and based on Ray's story, Ray said, I told him that I punched her, and there's even it's out there that Roger might have even seen the video. So if he does know, it's going to put the NFL in some real murky water.
If you're representing Ray Rice, you want to get Goodell to testify.
Oh, I do. Goodell testifying is everything.
Jim Robbins, you know, what's interesting here was people bring up Michael Vick as a comparison, but the big difference is Michael Vick paid his debt to society, seems to have understood that what he did was wrong, and I think that Ray Rice is going to have a whole lot of problems getting any sympathy, if you will, from the American public until he pays some sort of price here.
Oh yeah, I don't think he's going to get any sympathy, but I think the issue here is that it was the NFL that was acting in terms of emotion and public opinion and things like that, and not bringing in lawyers and looking at the collective bargaining agreement with the players and looking at the contracts. But the problem here is that too much of the decision-making was based on emotion and, you know, quick responses and things like that, and responding to a more graphic video than the already graphic video that was out there the first time. So I think that there has to be less emotion in this and a lot more doing it by the book. If he deserves more punishment, then fine. If he deserves to be let go, then fine. But if his lawyers can argue that the first punishment was the only punishment he's going to get, then the NFL is going to have egg on their face yet again.
Jim, you know, he could be reinstated, possibly. If he is reinstated, do you think there is any NFL team that would take the chance of picking him up? Again, Vic paid his price, paid a debt to society. We haven't seen that from Ray Rice, obviously, yet. Do you think anyone would take that chance and saying, look, the guy can pick up the tough yardage on 3rd and short, let's go take a chance without looking at his background, or taking his background in consideration?
I don't know. I think that the way decisions are made these days, they might not want to risk it, but who knows? A team that's not doing so well, who you know, needs the capabilities he has, maybe they would take a chance.
Sounds like the Oakland Raiders to me. I don't know. Michelle, you follow football at all?
I do, and I'm glad you didn't say the New Orleans Saints.
That's right, New Orleans.
I am.
Right.
The home of black and gold.
Care to weigh in on it?
You know, of course, I kind of agree with both. We saw the video, and it was really heartbreaking to see him beat his wife like that and her losing consciousness. And, you know, you got to assess the NFL like a business, and they broke their own policy. So therefore, they've got to deal with that. But yeah. I do find I don't see any other team picking him up. But like, you know, Jim said, who knows?
And again, under Vic, he paid a price, and people felt that he understood what he did wrong, and the teams were able to pick him up after that.
Right.
All right, switching gear on a real serious topic here. Viva Las Vegas. You can go to Las Vegas and have an Elvis impersonator marry you. You can do it through a drive-through window, drive-through chapel as well. But when it comes to marrying a gay couple, some of those wedding providers are saying it's against their religious beliefs. What do you think, Deanne Arthur? Should having an Elvis impersonator perform the wedding be against the religious belief? I mean, it's just kind of weird here to me.
Well, I think that they wanted the Supreme Court not addressing the issue. They wanted some kind of backing. So now it has to be, well, it's against my religious beliefs. But they're a business. They're holding themselves out as saying, I marry you. As Michelle will probably be able to talk more, businesses handle things in a different way than a church would.
Yeah, are they hypocritical, Michelle, to have Elvis come out and perform that wedding, do it drive through, but say, well, we're drawing that line at 2 guys and 2 girls?
Yeah, it is absolutely hypocritical, and, you know, businesses do that all the time. I mean, you see Hobby Lobby, you see Chick-fil-A also always citing their religious beliefs.
That was different, though, in this. That's a different case.
That is a different case, yeah. Absolutely.
But go ahead, I didn't interrupt you there.
But yeah, you know, it is hypocritical, absolutely.
Jim, put a 10 over him. It's a circus out there.
You know, Rick, if a 24-hour drive-through Elvis chapel can't stand up for the solemnity and sanctity of marriage, I just don't know what this country's coming to.
All right, what can you say?
The deep thoughts from Jim.
All right. That's our Grassrootsism panel. Again, I want to thank our members. I want to thank attorney, legal analyst Deanne Arthur, and Michelle Seiler-Tucker, who's author of the book
Sell Your Business for More Than It's Worth.
And what I like about what you're doing, Michelle, is you're telling the folks out there, don't rely upon the federal government for your economic well-being. Don't consider yourself to be a victim because you're male or female. Go out and create your own destiny.
Create your own economy.
Create your own economy. Love that phrase. And USA commentator, op-ed columnist Jim Robbins, thanks for being part of our Grassroots panel. Quick reminder, next week, Congressman Duncan Hunter joins me to comment on the reports that he's made, the comments that he's made that terrorists, ISIS sympathizers have been apprehended at the border, as well as filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza joining me in studio next week. We're expecting a report from James O'Keefe on voter fraud. That has not been broken yet. You'll hear more about that, plus a lot more surprises. I want to thank you, our viewers, for watching. Back at you again Monday night, same time, 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. Have a great weekend, everybody. Now, I leave you with our Amato Mio moment of the day. Brad Pitts, is interviewed by host Zach Galifianakis for the latest edition of Between Two Ferns.
Interviewed the president last time, and now I gotta, go back to interviewing dumb actors. That's all I'm saying. No, it's fine. It's fine. He's a big star. Hi. Welcome to another edition of Between Two Ferns. I'm your host, Zach Galifianakis. My guest today, Bradley Pitts. Bradley Pitts, thanks for joining me.
It's my pleasure.
How old were you when you lost your virginity? 0? I'll tell you about when I lost my virginity.
I would really not like to hear that.
Showers. Why don't you take them? You play a lot of people that are kind of Nazi haters, which is weird to me.
Why do you say that?
Because you look like Hitler's dream.